7, in room 166. I think it's just these 2 rooms. And then milk and cookies will be provided. This is
That'd be great.
and this info session is just like the application process if you guys want to do a PhD or for new students wanting to find out about the program. Our first activity is going to be on Tuesday, November 9th, and Heather Francis will be teaching us dance through like instruction. So that should be fun. And that's also in one of these rooms from 6 to 8. And then on the same day, we're also having a pie eating or a best pie contest. Okay, so basically, I think you can eat it too. Yeah, so you basically bring or make a pie, and then Joseph is in charge of doing the judgment stuff. Right? And then there's a sign-up sheet sent out for that if you guys want to participate in the contest.
Keeping track of
Yeah.
Make sure it's fair.
So sign up on the link I sent out. If you need it, send me an email and we send it out again. Also, friends and family are welcome to any of the event activities as well. And then keep submitting the t-shirt designs so we can decide on a fun design for our t-shirts.
Thank you, Kinsey. Are there any other announcements that anybody has? We will have seminar next week. There will be obviously many people gone to AECT, but there will be something here Wednesday at noon. There will be soup afterwards. If your schedules permit, you may be interested. It is the director of Utah Valley Refugees will be speaking next week. And so that may be something you're interested even in tuning in through Zoom at a distance if your schedules permit. Our presenter today is Rachel Wadham. Rachel is she's very welcomed in our seminar. She is a student in our program as well as our subject librarian, has been a great help to many of us and many more in the future. So we're grateful for her willingness to come and share some ideas about getting the most out of different kinds of resources. Let's just welcome her one more time to our seminar.
Family, so it's fabulous. So hello everyone. Just for those that may not know me who are new to the program, I'm Rachel Wadham, and I am a doctoral student in the program. This is my 3rd year in the program, and so you will probably see me in classes and such. So I have that hat, but then also my other hat is that I work in the Harold Bailey Library. I am the education librarian. We are what is called subject librarians. So essentially we have a librarian that's assigned to every academic discipline on campus. And it's our job as the subject librarian to make sure that all of the students and faculty in our discipline have all of the resources and help that they need to do their work. So today I am not here as a cohort student with you. I am here as the librarian to offer some tips and structures and expertise to help you. And
Halloween tricks.
There we go. Tricks, maybe some treats. There was soup afterwards for the treats. So we got this. So today I really don't have a particular structure or anything that I wanted to do because I want to tailor this as much to your needs and questions and thoughts as I can. Particularly when you get to this level of graduate studies, it really is an individual kind of thing, right? There's some universal things and some universal helps that can really help people out, but then it becomes a more individualized one-on-one type of thing. So I want to answer your questions, tailor things. If there's things that you're interested in knowing, I'm more than happy to answer any kinds of questions today about the library or about my services or about research or anything like that. But I did want to talk about one thing that I think is pretty universal, and I think that it's pretty important, and that is organization and organizing your stuff. Because one of the things that you will quickly, very, very quickly find is that as you do all of this stuff, there's a lot of stuff coming at you that you have to keep organized. And that includes research information that you're pulling from library databases or scholarly information that you're pulling in. It also can include information from other sources that may not be of that scholarly nature. A lot of stuff of what we engage with may be blogs or, are you okay, Scott? He trips and falls. Okay, you're not on the floor, so we're good. Some of it may be blogs or professional kinds of information or conference papers or other types of things that may be other types of information that may not come from those kind of scholarly resources. And then additionally, as you go down the pike, there's also all of the organization of, the data that you're collecting and all of, the design processes and the steps that you're doing and making sure that you have all of the files and pictures and everything you need for all of that. And so it can get really overwhelming really, really quickly when you get all of this stuff coming down the pike. And particularly for those of us in the doctoral program, if you're doing the 3-article dissertation, that gets even more complicated because you're going to have probably literature reviews or slightly different literature reviews for each article. And so it can just get so overwhelming so quickly. So I want to talk a little bit today about organization and some structures that I have found useful to keep yourself organized and keep those structures organized. Now, the reality of this is I'm going to offer some generalities because it really depends on what works best for you in the end. And not everything is going to work equally well for everybody. So I would hope that as I talk about some of these resources that you please speak up and let me know if you've had any experiences with them or if you have any preferences. I know that Dr. West has some very strong opinions in this area as well. So I hope he will speak up and add some information here, because just hearing each other's experiences is really, really important. So for me, particularly when it comes to information and information that's supportive of this, so we're not going to talk about data organization or data storage or all of that kind of stuff, although I can help with that if you're interested in it. It's mainly this kind of citation information and gathering this citation information. Now, for me, I always recommend that you start with the library and the resources that the library offers. If you go through the resources that the library offers, there's really direct connections to a lot of these organizational tools that make it a lot easier and a lot more direct than if you're using something like Google Scholar. So I personally say, this is your home page, this is your landing point, this is where you need to start, and this is going to give you access to all different kinds of data. Among it, it's going to give you access to all different kinds of research data. This is my research guide. Just FYI, if you want to come and see me as the librarian, that's how you get in touch with me.
Do you have to be on campus to access that, or?
No, you don't. So if you are off campus, it will actually ask you to log in. So you'll log in with your BYU credentials and you can get access to all of this. So none of the things that most of us would access. There's a couple of things we have in the library that you can't access off site. You can only access actually in the library. But those are pretty specialized things that we usually don't deal with. But these kinds of things you can access anywhere. So accessing these kinds of things are going to be really useful to you. They're going to provide a really great context for you. I'm not going to go into the specifics of how to search these databases or which databases would be useful or anything like that. That is for another time. And if you're interested, I can help you with that, or we can answer questions about it. But the reality is that once you get to your database, these databases have direct connections to organizational tools that are really great. So if you go into a database and do a search, so I'm going to do professional identity, which is one of the concepts of my dissertation work. And I'm just doing a really generalized search today. There's ways to do more specific searches that are much more accurate, but just for examples today, you can go in and do a search. And then once you've got the searches you want, you can add it to your folder like this. And then once you've added it to your folder, it gives you a couple of options. One of the options is to email it to yourself, and that can be really good because if you email the information to yourself, It will attach any PDFs that are in ERIC. So you've already essentially kind of downloaded the PDFs, which is nice. But unfortunately, having all of these bunches of emails in your email box is not a really good organizational strategy. It is horrible organizational strategy. So to do an organizational strategy, you want to use this export. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to take the data that is in this database and put it into an organizational tool. Now, there's lots of options of organizational tools. You can see here, there's EasyBib, EndNote, ProScience, Reference Managers, Otero, RefWorks, all of the above. We're going to talk about a couple of those today. Really, in my estimation, these tools do essentially the same thing. It's just a different interface, a different overlay, or different colors, different company. There are some tools that have strengths versus weaknesses, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this. But it really just depends on what works best for you and what strengths and weaknesses you want to do. But for our example today, I'm going to talk about RefWorks. And I know there's some strong opinions about RefWorks, but it is the one that the library provides directly. That's why it's default, is because we're the ones in the library that buy and pay for this. So we've aligned all of our databases to directly work with RefWorks. That doesn't mean it's the best. It just means that it's the one that we provide. So it's direct there. And so I'm going to use it for my demo today, and then we'll talk about some of the others. So once you're done with this, then you can just click on save, and it will ask you, do you want to export it into RefWorks? And you say, yes, I want to export it into RefWorks. And then it will bring it into RefWorks. Now, the nice thing about doing it this way is that it pulls all of the data that is in the database into RefWorks. And it tends to then be clean data, which is the trickiest part about these organizational tools, is they really like clean data. And so the nice thing about this direct export is that it pulls it into my organizational tool and I get clean data for it. Yes.
So I'm like kind of following along.
Yes, please.
On your steps here, and it asks me to log into RefWorks.
Yes.
So, and then it says use login for my institution, and I can't find Brigham Young University under there. So how do I log in
So have you created an account?
with RefWorks?
Yes. Okay. So that would be the first thing you want to do, is create an account with RefWorks. And the best way to do that is to go through the library webpage and to go through our RefWorks on the library, because that will authenticate you as a BYU person, right?
Where did you find that?
BYU Library Services Bibliography Generators. So it's essentially BYU Library Services. And then you can, I usually go down here for students, and then it says Bibliography Generators right here. And that will get you to that page. And then you can just log into RefWorks.
Okay, thank you.
So that really is the first step. I was just going to show you how it worked really quickly before I talked about that, but thank you for jumping in. I know that's totally fine. No, it's totally fine. I organized it differently, but I'm glad you jumped in and said that, because I probably should have said that earlier. So I've already logged in, so you can see that I've already have my account and I've logged in. So when I connected, it automatically opened it. But if you don't have an account, you then have to create an account, and then it will ask you to log in, and you just log in with your normal account. So you can, once you get through the library to do your login, you can just put whatever login. It's like you're signing up for a brand new website, right? It's like you're signing up for an account on Amazon or something like that. So you're just signing up for an account on RefWorks. So once you do that, it says, okay, where do you want to put it? Now, this is really a good thing, because this is where your organizational piece starts, is that you can have all different kinds of folders and all different kinds of structures that you can then take and put the different pieces that you want in. Personally, I like to have multiple different folders, because I like to have ones that represent different aspects of what I'm doing, right? And so I will just make different kinds of topics. You could just have a, thesis or dissertation folder or something like that. I like to go a little more granular and have some things that are different. So I might have a thesis folder that's general, like I do for my accelerated reader, and then just talk, and underneath it have an elementary. But it's just like you would organize folders in like Microsoft Word or anything else like that. It's just that same thing. You're just organizing these folders. And then once you have the folder that you want, for these presentations, I have a folder that is called tests that I put all this stuff in. And you just click on import. And that will just directly import the data in it. So one of the benefits of using one of these programs is A, you're getting clean data from the databases because they have this lovely direct connect. B, it is you have these folders so you can organize it. And then C, you have it all in one place, in one resource to go to. A lot of people at this point ask me the question of, well, can I just log into EBSCO or into ERIC and save it in ERIC? And I said, yeah, you could, but then if you have to search ProQuest, you'd have to save it there. And then if you have to go into Gale, then you have to save it there. And if then you have to go into Wiley, you have to save it there. And so for me, it just becomes unmanageable if you're relying on the database for your organizational tool. Charles.
Does RefWorks allow you to share your folder?
They do, yeah. RefWorks does allow you to share your folder. So you can see over there, it's sharing, and you can do that. I will say that that is one of the weaknesses of RefWorks. Is RefWorks allows sharing and you can do sharing, but it's not a really robust sharing. Personally, if sharing is really critical to you, I actually think Mendeley is a little bit stronger in that area. Because in the end, they all kind of do the same things, but they have these strengths and weaknesses. So yes, you can share and do stuff, but RefWorks isn't great. So yeah, I hope you will speak up on this, Rick.
When you share in RefWorks, can you share with people outside of BYU, or do they have to have a RefWorks account?
That is a
That's like
really good question.
I think they have to have a RefWorks account. It doesn't have to be a BYU account, but it
Yeah.
has to be a RefWorks account.
Yeah, they do have to have a RefWorks account. And that's one of the reasons that Mendeley is a little stronger, because Mendeley is free open accounts. So if you're sharing with outside of BYU and they're not having a RefWorks subscription, there is some connections there that make it a little stronger. So yeah, and Rick, dive in. I hope you have something to say on this. Yeah.
I'm familiar with Mendeley sharing, but what about Zotero sharing? How strong is that?
You know, for me personally, right? So there's all of these kind of tools that work. And for me, they kind of go in a hierarchy. And my hierarchy personally is I prefer RefWorks for a variety of reasons. Mendeley is my second one. Zotero is my third one, and EndNote is my fourth one. So that's kind of my ranking and hierarchy. So I personally use RefWorks and I find it to be the best useful for what I want. Zotero, I don't think is really great on sharing either. It's not a really great sharer. For me, Zotero, its strength is if it is web-based information, because Zotero was initially designed as a web scraper that it could pull data just automatically off the internet. So if a lot of your research has to do with blogs or newspapers or information that's going to be exclusively on the internet and not by that I don't mean information in like these library databases. They are on the internet, but it's internet produced information. That's where Zotero is strong for me. But the reality is that all of these will do the same thing, right? They'll do the foundational thing. They'll allow you to put information in. They'll allow you to organize information. And then the other pieces of it is they'll allow you to output information. And that's the other piece of these bibliography generators that is really significant, is because they allow you to connect and do your bibliographies and your citations in a really great way. So you can connect in that way. So all of them will do those basic kinds of things and help you organize and output what you need. beyond that, there's some strengths and weaknesses. Scott?
I'm working on an article with an author, graduate students here, and a colleague, at Southern Utah University. And, we're sharing the document, we're all working off the same document, we all have our assignments, Google Docs. And obviously Google Docs allows you to do the footnoting.
Yeah.
Because Google's done everything else for everybody. Do they? Here's where I'm going. Is there an
Yeah.
option for us to connect a team that's working on a document with not only the shared document, but also, the shared, and is it an annotated bibliography or just a raw?
Yeah, and that's the trickiest part of this, right? Because Google does not have an organizing and bibliography generating feature that is equivalent to the things that RefWorks, Mendeley, Zotero, and EndNote can do. It just doesn't. So in order to organize and structure your research findings data, your literature review data, you have to use one of these resources. Now, these resources then do connect with the writing processes like Google Docs and Word and all of that type of thing. So there is a way you can connect those two between them. But as far as the organization and the storage and the generation of bibliographic data, Google does not do that at all in some ways and not well in other ways. So Google Docs is not going to be a substitute for something like this. Does that help?
Are there any other solutions? Would you recommend, can we work on a document together in RefWorks?
The purpose of RefWorks is not a writing, it's not a writing production tool in that way.
That kind of space.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a collaborative writing tool. These bibliography generators are meant to be a storage for your data, storage for research citation data, and then a way to then cite and provide citations and bibliographies for that data. So that piece of the writing piece, the citation and the bibliography piece, is the piece that they connect with. But this is not going to be the kind of thing that you can actually do that kind of collaborative writing. Now, with that said, Mendeley does provide a feature where you can actually pull in the PDF and do collaborative markup of the PDF. So that would be if you were reading a PDF together or reading a research article and you wanted to annotate it in the article, but then taking that annotation and writing about it or writing a separate annotation, there's going to be no word processing feature that these have.
Thank you.
Okay, I've seen a couple of hands. So Charles, I saw yours earlier, did you?
I was wondering, I was thinking about the context of a student, maybe a doctoral student who is going to graduate after doing their dissertation, will continue to use a tool. And I'm just wondering if they choose RefWorks or a master's student that decides they're going to go do their dissertation at another university, is there a way for them to continue to use what they've created, or should they be thinking about that long term at the beginning?
So our license with RefWorks allows current and former students to keep their account. So we are not going to kick you out of RefWorks once you graduate. Now, there are some things in the library that you will not have access to once you graduate, but RefWorks is not one of them. So in my estimation, that doesn't really matter in the context of it.
Hold it into RefWorks from the database. They'll
It's
have
there.
permanent access to that.
Yeah.
But they might not be able to go back out.
Back to the database and get it. Yeah. Yeah. The database access is not licensed in the same way as RefWorks is. So you are going to have access to RefWorks long-term, right? And Mendeley and Zotero are just free accounts on the web. So you would definitely have access to them long-term. The only one that you won't have access to long-term is EndNote. And that is because it is a software download that comes through OIT. And as a software download, you have to go through OIT and you have to have credentials to download it. So the reality is if you do EndNote, you can download the version that's current and get the current version. But once you leave BYU, there's no way that you can update. You won't be able to update your version. So you could buy a new version and still new EndNote, but you might have to buy that individual software that way. Does that help, Charles?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw a couple of hands over here.
My question is a little bit more related to the collaborative writing piece.
Okay, go for it.
I know I've used Zotero before with the plugin that it can have, I think both for Google Docs and Microsoft.
Yeah.
Do all of these have an equivalent?
Yes.
plugin?
Yes, they do. They all have an equivalent plugin that will allow you to connect with those writing documents.
Are you able to use multiple citation plugins?
Theoretically, you can. You can. And I have actually used RefWorks and Zotero at the same time because I was doing a project that required a lot of blog kind of data. And so I actually used both of them. And so technically you can, but it doesn't always play nicely with each other. And you do have to do some editing. So like, for example, when you generate it through, when you generate it through RefWorks, it connects in a certain way. And when you generate it through Zotero, it connects in a certain way. And so sometimes, particularly with the bibliography, it's like it'll put the RefWorks bibliography and then the Zotero bibliography, and then you have to go and integrate them. And it won't do something like, I have a string of references, you know, like I have this citation and it's a string of references, Smith and Jones, 2007, you know, James and Smith, da, 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 you know, I have this long string. It won't allow you to integrate them. Yeah. So the integration can be really tricky. So it is technically possible, but not always applicably ideal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Other question up here? Okay, Charles.
RefWorks actually pull the full text into RefWorks? Or
That is, okay, yeah, that is one of the downsides of RefWorks. One of the downsides of RefWorks is the way it connects, because it connects directly to the database, and because of the way the databases work, the only thing that it will actually pull in is the citation itself, right? So you can see here, this is a citation that I have in a folder.
So the implications of that, I'm just wondering, so if you do a search in RefWorks, like let's say you want to search the documents in a particular folder, you're only searching basically abstract.
You're only searching the abstract, the title of the abstract, the subject headings, the citation data that it's pulling.
Are there any of the tools that do bring in the full document?
Mendeley and Zotero will automatically bring in the full document. Now, the only reason that RefWorks doesn't is, again, because of the way that it's licensed, that it's connecting with the licensed databases. Because when I download it from Eric, it can't get past that licensing piece. So it can't just pull the PDFs for me. You can, however, just drag and drop things and load the PDFs in. So for me, that's the answer, right? You load the PDF and you download the PDF and then you just drag it and drop it and it attaches it. So you can actually save the PDFs in there, but it's not an automatic getting the PDFs. You have to actually bring them in and drag them, drop them.
It's not searchable, right?
The PDFs are not searchable.
I see Mendeley as one of the options.
So because we promote RefWorks in the library, we don't really connect to Mendeley, but you can just search it on the web and find it. But I will say, Charles, with that, I realize that pulling the PDFs in is an extra step. But there is, to me, some benefit of having to do that extra step a little bit. And that is, I am getting 100% clean data from a database that has marked the data appropriately. Because one of the issues is when you load stuff in from Mendeley or Zotero and it's just pulling everything, it often can misidentify information. Because if the metadata wasn't tagged behind the scenes as appropriately what it is, then it can't connect with it and tell it. So I've often seen where it'll pull in journal titles as the author or, you know, all different kinds of things. And so for me, one of the benefits of using it database to RefWorks or database to Mendeley or database to Zotero is that it is clean information. And I know it has been tagged and marked and the metadata is absolutely clean. So personally, I would rather spend time downloading the PDF and pulling it in than having to clean up the metadata. And that's just the trade-off for me. Because cleaning up the metadata can get really tricky and difficult, and it's just not fun. You know, I don't like cleaning metadata, and I spent the first 12 years of my career as a cataloger, of which my job was cleaning metadata. So it's just, for me, that's the balance of it there. And then additionally, the other thing is with things in the databases, not everything is full text in that database, right? Because Eric isn't licensed for every journal, for every full text in everything. So there's going to be some stuff that I'm going to have to use the Get It at BYU button and go and find it in Wiley or Taylor and Francis, or I'm going to have to order it through interlibrary loan. So I'm getting the PDFs from a variety of places anyway. So even if I download it, I'm not going to get 100% PDFs, even if it could pull the PDF. So I might as well just go through and, you know, make sure it's that. So for me, it's a trade-off. I mean, that's the tricky thing with all of these databases is that there's strengths and weaknesses to them. And you just have to figure out what's going to be the best for you. Because for me, cleaning up metadata is not what I want to do, but pulling it in is better. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm assuming also since is there a desktop app for?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
can use it offline? too?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can download the desktop app. Okay, Stephanie.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what do you use for searching, like once you've downloaded your PDFs, what do you use for working with those PDFs? Since you can't do it in RefWorks and like marking it up, highlighting.
Yeah, now RefWorks does have a PDF highlighter and stuff that you can do. So you can actually do the markup in RefWorks, just like you can in Mendeley and Zotero. So
your highlights.
That is one of the negatives of it, is because it then just saves it as another PDF, right? And so it just becomes non-searchable, right? And most PDFs, depending on how they're done, are tricky to search anyway, depending on, you know, how they were created. So no, it doesn't do that. It doesn't allow you to search your notes. And then additionally, if you print it, it doesn't print really well out from RefWorks. So personally, I prefer context that I can mark up and do the notes that are others. So I use some apps, and we've discussed some of those apps in a previous seminar where we did it. So I use one that's called Paper Notes, where you just pull it in as a PDF and then you can mark it up, you know, with your Apple Pencil or whatever, and then it will save it and export it as that. But there's like liquid text. Rick, is that what you use, liquid text?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of those kinds of things that are useful for there. So I will honestly say that I only use RefWorks for saving an organization. I don't use it for marking up or reading. I would use those other things. And then I pull those files in. And then once I've done the markup and I know it's something I'm going to use, then I'll save my marked up PDF copy back into RefWorks. So that becomes a little bit of a management nightmare, but at least you have one place that you can manage all of this stuff in, and it's connected to all of that metadata and that type of thing. So it is tricky because you have to use these other tools in that writing, reading, and production process. These tools aren't going to be perfect for that. So here and then here.
I'm just going to ask how these tools play with Google Scholar.
They do. RefWorks doesn't play well with Google Scholar. It can, but it doesn't play really well with it. Mendeley and Zotero do play well with Google Scholar because they're entirely web-based and they were designed for that kind of research. We can have a Google Scholar conversation if you want to, because I personally believe that students rely on Google Scholar far too much. And that Google Scholar isn't as good as people think it is. Now, we can have that additional conversation and go into that in more depth if you want. So for me, I just don't find Google Scholar useful. And I actually think that there's some real downsides to Google Scholar that make it so at this level, particularly with the kind of research that we're doing, that we shouldn't be relying on it as much as we do. So I don't mind that RefWorks doesn't play well with Google Scholar because I very rarely use it. And that's not just because I'm the librarian, I'm biased, right? I have reasons and I can explain those later if you want to.
How well do some of these tools communicate with each other? So if, for example, I'm at the very beginning of a gathering process and I've used one, but I think maybe another one would be better. Can I export and transfer?
Yes, you definitely can. There is a file format that all of these databases use to communicate with each other. That's a database marked up format. And then all you have to do is just download it in that format, and then you just upload the file into it. Now, you would with that lose the PDFs and stuff because that transfer format doesn't connect that at that level. It will connect at the data level, at the citation level. And so then you'd have to load in the PDFs and stuff, but they do communicate quite well with each other.
What about like the links to them?
Yeah, that would be in there. So if it's raw textual data, not files level data, that it will pull in. Yeah.
These with the push of a button will move us from one style manual to another.
Yeah, and that is really one of the benefits of all of this, right? Is because not only is it a place to organize and save all of everything you're doing, but then it also connects to your citations. So it will create a bibliography for you. So if you go here, create a bibliography, and all of them will do this, right? And you can just tell it what citation style you want. I've defaulted mine to APA 6 because that's what I've been using recently, but you can do APA 7 or MLA or, any of the styles that you want, you can do it. And it even has, you can see that there are over 6,000 styles here, because some journals will have proprietary styles that are like based on Chicago or some nonsense like that. And I say that with truth. It's just like, why would you change a citation style? It's just like, stick with the biggies, right? So that's really useful, right? Now, the other cool thing about this integration with citation styles is this is just generating a bibliography that I can copy and paste. But if I had that connection, those little app connections that I connected to Word or Google Docs, it will also do my in-text citations. And so I'm typing along and I say, and this is this quote of this person, in-text citation of the person. And all of these, what they will do is they will put a little code in your document of that in-text citation. And then when you are finished, you just say, generate the bibliography, and it will automatically generate this bibliography at the bottom of everything you have in your citations. So the cool thing about that is you're never going to forget that you put in in-text citations and not, I know, yeah, I commiserate with that. You put an in-text citation, but then you didn't put it in your bibliography. So that's a great solution there. The other cool thing is that some of us are very interdisciplinary in this context, and not every discipline uses the same citation style. Yeah, there's connections here, right? Because like I publish in education, but I also publish in the humanities and literacy literature research. And so the education uses APA, but the humanities uses MLA, right? And there's sometimes that I have an article and I submit it through an education journal. And as I submit it through an education journal, they reject it, right? But the article as it is could easily be submitted to like a humanities journal or a literature journal. And so the cool thing about this is then all I have to do is take my document, and because of all the connections I've made back to RefWorks, I just have to say now generate it in MLA. And it changes all of that to MLA for me. So I don't have to redo all that work. Yeah, it's like, we are not worthy of this greatness of technology, right? Because it really is useful that way. Now, if you're never using different citation styles, that may not be important to you. But for those of us that speak multiple citation styles, you know, that really can be helpful because it generates it back and forth for you. So that's the other benefit of these tools. So the first benefit of these tools is it's a place to organize, keep, store your information, right? And then the other piece is then it helps you with this bibliography citation piece, which can get really complicated and really persnickety. I will say when you're submitting your thesis or your dissertation, the dean's office is really persnickety about APA style. So having this much help to get to where they need you to be is so useful long-term.
You wouldn't understate things so much.
I know you wish I would be a lot less passionate and clear about what I have to say, right? Yeah, I know.
I think maybe I know the answer to this question, but I was just going to ask, I know different citation generators, they're not always perfect.
Yeah, they're
And
not.
I was going to ask you which of them you found to be the most, but maybe it depends more on the cleanliness of the metadata than.
It does. I mean, I would say that 98% of the time, if you're getting stuff out that's wrong, it's because you didn't put the data in right. So it's bad data in, bad data out. So that's one of the reasons I really recommend using the databases, because it has really great data and really clean data. And if you get good data in, you just have saved yourself a whole lot of issues. And some of these, when you pull it off the web, it's just bad data. So that's usually, I would say like 90% of the time that's the problem. Now, I will say there are some quirks of citation styles that you just have to know about that make it that way. So for example, with APA, the titles of articles are all of the words except at the beginning are lowercase. But because the metadata itself doesn't indicate if it's a proper noun that needs to be capitalized, it will just automatically, because it knows that that's the case, no matter how you input it into it, it's just going to automatically lowercase everything. So one of the things you have to know with APA, and this is true of any of the citation databases, is that you have to go through and make sure that you've capitalized all the proper nouns in the titles, because that's just the way APA is, right? With other things like Chicago and other things like that, it's not the same. So there are some of those issues that aren't necessarily bad data in, it's just quirks of the citation styles themselves, right? With that way. So for me, the best thing you can do is just make sure your data is clean. And I would recommend that if you pull data in from any other source other than the database, which is totally clean, that you immediately, once you get it in, go through and just proofread it. Make sure it's in the right fields, make sure it's tagged in the right way, make sure it's, doesn't have, weird characters that it pulled in or anything like that. Because if you wait to do that until after, it can be a nightmare. Because one of my biggest heartbreaks that I face in my job is when I have a graduate student who is finishing up their thesis or dissertation, and they come to me and they say, I have this citation that I cited in text in my paper, and I have no idea what article it is, and I can't find it anymore. And it's like Smith and Jones, 2016. And I'm like, okay, we'll try, right? And sometimes we can find it and sometimes we can't, right? And so for me, having something like this is just so wonderful, because if you've pulled it in, you know that it's there and you cited Smith and Jones. It's so much easier to find Smith and Jones in this world than it would be to find it in the database world. So, that to me is a lifesaver with all of this, right? Because you have it all in one place, you have it all there, you know that it's structured in the right way, and it's just cleaner and easier. And this, just using a bibliography generator, whichever one you use, can save you so much time and effort in the long run. Definitely. Charles.
So this is just I'm just wanting to know your personal preference, but when you structure your data within RefWorks or whatever tool you use, do you tend to structure it in folders, or do you tend to use tags to structure the?
I tend to structure it with folders just because I like that organization and it's easier for me to go, like when I'm doing the literature review for this article, for this part of my thesis, this is where the things are. I tend to name my folders according to kind of tagged kinds of things, right? So you can tell like from this one that I did, it's PD and PI. So the search terms I used to find these were professional development and professional identity. So I tend to use it that way. There are some times, depending on the project that I'm working on, that I will use tags. So I can go deeper and tag it in. But I'll, as kind of the macro level, I always use folders and then maybe subfolders. And then that is more of the micro level where I'm really getting into the nitty gritty of things. And I want to just make sure that I know that there's these pieces within the nitty gritty. So I use it in a hierarchical kind of way.
Do tags work better if you would be using one article in multiple instances? Or because if you have folders and you have to save various versions of it?
Yeah, I mean, you can put things in multiple folders if you want. So you can have them across folders. Yeah, and it just depends on how you're working and what that looks like for you, right? Because there definitely is going to be cross-pollination between things. So that really becomes more of a personal preference.
A single article can have multiple tags.
Oh, it can, and they can be in multiple folders. Yeah. So you can organize it however you feel like they want to. But in that instance, you're probably right that tags would be more useful for that kind of organization than the folder level would be. So you could have just like a thesis folder and then use the tags to say, part A, part B, part C kind of thing. Yeah, definitely.
What do you like when you're using an iOS device?
I find that all of them work really well. I only use iOS. In fact, I have been a Mac person since 1984. But the first Macintosh I had in my home was in 1984. So I have never really done anything different. I use PCs in my work environment, but they all work really, really well. They have downloadable apps that you can use on iPads and on your phone and stuff. So I think they're all pretty equivalent within that realm. I personally don't like EndNote because I think it's too complicated. RefWorks and Mendeley are just more streamlined and clear and less distraction and clutter. EndNote, I think, goes too far and it's just really cluttered. So I don't like the visual look of it in any of its representations. But I'm really sensitive to how it's laid out and what it looks like and how easy it is to navigate. Other questions? I know this has been kind of all over the place and scattershot, but summary, use one of these programs, right? These are going to be really, really helpful to you. It is, in my estimation, the only way to stay organized and the only way to keep, a sense of this complexity, at least for this part of the, at least this part of it. I would recommend maybe looking at one or two, signing up for an account. I mean, the accounts are all free, so you're not losing anything. Playing around with a little bit, seeing which one you feel like works best for you. A lot of times you may be working with a professor that will require you to use one or the other. So that may be part of the consideration that you're using. But my summary is, whatever you use it. Use one. I think graduate students that use one of these programs just end up being more successful because there's that context. And then the other thing is, please, if you need help, let me know. I am here to help you in whatever way I can. I tell all of my classes, all of my students, that it's my job to make your life easier. That's my job description. So let me do my job, and please let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Like I said, this is kind of generalized, and a lot of this gets more personalized And so if you want to come and talk to me one-on-one, you saw how you can make an appointment with me. I'm usually here for seminar and for soup kitchen. If you want to just grab me here, or if you see me in class or anything like that, please don't hesitate to let me help you, because I am here to help support you in whatever way I can and to make sure that you are successful at what you're doing. So thanks for your time. If you have any other questions, let me know, and I'll check the chat for the Zoom people just in case you guys have any questions. If you want to put them on their Zoom, I'll check them as we go. And then if you want to talk, I'll be here for Soup Kitchen. So if you want to talk more about things or have other questions, let me know. Thanks, guys.
Just say too, that inviting Rachel was a direct result of suggestions that people made about seminar topics they'd like to see. We don't necessarily have time for every suggestion, but we do read all the suggestions, and if we can, we try to incorporate them into future semesters. So remember, next week, we'll be back here again next week, even though with the conference going on, we'll still have a seminar, and let's go get some soup.